Now, tonight on the Late Edition, we're joined by a candidate who hopes to reshape the future of global tourism, Harry Theoharis. With a formidable track record as Greece's former Minister of Tourism, Harry Theoharis helped steer his country's tourism industry through the COVID-19 crisis with innovation and resolve. Now, he's among 6 contenders vying for the role of Secretary General of the United Nations Tourism Organization, or UN Tourism. His campaign is built on a powerful vision: reform to transform, unite to grow. But for Africa, his ambition runs even deeper. Through his flagship initiative, Mission 100, Theoharis set out to attract 100 million tourists to Africa, unlock $100 billion in investment, and create 10 million new jobs by 2030. Backed by a bold agenda of connectivity reforms, digital innovation, green investments, and youth empowerment, Theoharis promises to make Africa a global tourism powerhouse. Mr. Theoharis, welcome to the Late Edition. How are you?
I'm fine. Thank you very much for the invitation.
No, it's a pleasure to have you with us. What a bold agenda.
Indeed.
100 million.
Yes.
You want to create this number of jobs. We're talking here 100 million visitors, $100 billion in investment, and 10 million new jobs across Africa by 2030. That's in less than 5 years now, essentially.
Correct.
Talk to us about this very bold agenda and what exactly is the game plan?
The game plan is to engage all the countries of Africa. We need to focus on youth. We need to focus on their empowerment. That means good education, education that can be of the highest standards, but education that respects the local traditions. And we don't want a tourism product that really is without a soul, without a connection to the land, because that's what the people demand when they travel. So that's the first part of the plan. The second part, of course, is more cooperation. We need more intra-regional and inter-regional cooperation. Now, within Africa and the sub-regions of Africa, we need to cooperate more on the visa regimes, on liberalizing the ability to travel, unlocking the potential of Africa itself. And finally, we need to have more connectivity, more extroversion of the continent as a whole, so that more tourists come from the other regions. Mm-hmm. All this can only be achieved if the countries of Africa work together. So I plan to ensure that UN Tourism plays a coordinating role, but the ministers of tourism of the African nations will take the center stage. They will be responsible for the parts of the plan that their countries will commit to.
Because it most certainly is a very big plan. You touch on connectivity.
Yes.
There are many struggles in Africa pertaining to air connectivity here, even with the e-visas. What is the plan around that?
Well, we need to do a couple of things. The first thing is to actually go to the airlines through IATA and go directly to the airlines as well, and tap upon the very structured way that they make the decisions on what kind of flights they're going to put and what kind of flights they're going to stop. So we need to get the expertise, and as a Minister of Tourism, I did that for Greece, and as a result, we increased the connectivity, especially to the US, almost threefold, and create tailor-made advice for the governments on how to increase the connectivity. So that's number one. And number two is we need to look at the best practices of the visa regimes. Yeah. And I think the European Union, with the Schengen Agreement, is one model that could work, if not for the whole of Africa, which is, I think, too ambitious, at least for some regions that the requirements and the ability to cooperate is there. And in order to do that, we need to see what are the sticky points, what are the difficult points when EU created the Schengen regime. For example, we need to have common standards across the borders. Yeah. On when people enter the Schengen area. The same thing would need to happen. So we need to work together. That's why in my plan I talk about unity in terms of cooperation and in terms of common understanding of the goals, and sharing of those goals is a key element.
Well, certainly the complex visa regimes are discouraging to many if they want to come to the continent, to specifically certain nations. But all of this is going to need political buy-in.
Yes.
Unfortunately, because in as much as it sounds like a very grand plan, you're going to have to beyond that present it now to the various heads of state or certain portfolios within those governments. So what becomes the incentive for them? Is it this very amount, the 100 billion investment, and then the number of jobs that could be created? Is that the incentive, that is the document that you would come to some of these nations with to say it would be beneficial to almost do away with this very complex visa regime, because here we could get more investment and you could also have a number of jobs created in your countries?
Yeah. Well, I think what surprises me, I'm actually touring Africa, and this gives us the opportunity to speak up close. So I've seen a lot of the governments, and we don't need an incentive. Why? Because the power of tourism is self-evident. Its ability to create wealth for the local population is almost self-evident. We don't need to convince people to travel. People, the middle class of the different regions, takes traveling for granted now. So the only thing that we need to do is to ensure that we have expert advice at the fingertips of the governments. So I see governments in many areas of Africa that are, run by technocrats. They understand the power of data. They understand the power of decision making based on that data and accurate policy making. So effectively, all we have to do is bring the experts, make the case in numbers, and I'm sure the decisions of the governments will be the right ones.
Mm-hmm. Now, it seems workforce development is a big promise that you make. So with Mission 100, you're saying that you're going to train a number of African tourism officials. How will you go about doing this?
Well, what we need to do is two things. The first thing is we need to ensure that the training is of an adequate standard. And I think UN Tourism can help in the vetting of the academies and of the universities. Yeah. So that's number one, in order to ensure that the choices, the educational choices for the African youth are there. The second thing that we need to do is we need to attract the big schools of the European or the American continent to bring them to Africa. And then I think the fact that there is such a big pool of young population, which is very dynamic, very tech savvy, and thirsty, if you like, for those career choices that will allow them to have a life path that brings them prosperity, is the big incentive for those schools to come to Africa. And finally, we need to ensure that those people that come out of those schools, they have the adequate vocational training so that they continue during their career to upskill themselves and to have the latest, dexterities that are needed for the job.
So just for clarity, it will not be standardization of the tourism curriculum at various institutions. Is there also a desire to have a Mission 100 Skills Academy?
Well, that's a possibility. My vision and my ambition is to ensure that this is a member states-led organization. Yeah. So the Mission 100 Skills Academy will be presented to the member states and to see whether this is something that can be a common decision. If that's the case, then yes, of course, UN Tourism under my leadership will be ready to support such initiative.
Mm-hmm. You also speak of regenerative tourism. Mm-hmm. What exactly do you mean with that term? This is what you desire, regenerative tourism.
Well, actually, when we talk about sustainability, I both feel frustrated. I feel frustrated in two senses of the word. The first is that a lot of the other regions that have not necessarily sustained their environment and very well are trying to tell Africa what to do in an area that Africa has a very good track record. It's one of the most pristine places of this earth. So this is one thing that's important. But the second thing is that Africa has to be careful. Why? Because now we need to balance this thirst for growth, this thirst for development, which is more and more maturing in the governments of Africa and in the investors that are looking at Africa in a much more serious way, with the need to keep not just the environment in the right fashion, but actually to ensure that it stays exactly the same for the generations to come.
Which is a big dilemma, because it's a tough balancing act. If you want to industrialize, highly industrialize, unfortunately many are saying there will be some sort of environmental impact.
Well, there always is an environmental impact. That's why we need to look back. There's an important environmental impact as we develop, as we build those hotel lodges and things that are required for tourism. But what regenerative tourism does is that it takes the operation of the property to actually restore the environment that was traumatized during the development phase. So as a result, as we operate, we actually restore the environment, but not just the environment. We must always remember that we're talking about the three dimensions. We need the economic sustainability, and we need the social sustainability and social regeneration. So we also need to ensure that the profits are enjoyed by the community as well, not just by the big corporations.
Harry, thank you very much for your time. Good luck. Very ambitious agenda. Most certainly, we are wishing you all the luck here at the SABC. Thank you very much for joining us. That's Harry Theoharis. He's a candidate for Secretary General of UN Tourism, speaking to us this evening.